37-page indictment.
13 Russians indicted for trying to throw our elections into total disarray and chaos.
This is a clear vindication for the president and our team that said we didn't have anything to do with this. But the mainstream media doesn't want to give him the credit that he won fair and square.
The FBI under pressure after a stunning admission. The agency confirming that it failed to follow up on a tip about the accused Florida school shooter Nicholas Cruz.
The president weighing in on the FBI, very sad that the FBI missed all of the many signals sent out by the Florida school shooter. Get back to the basics and make us all proud.
When President Trump meets with our nation's governors in just a few short weeks, he will make the safety of our nation's schools our top administration priority.
But to the inside, it's Elliott Sadler. A photo finish. Tyler Reddick's going to edge him out. And Tyler Reddick at the line pulls it off. Woohoo!
You know, after that last segment, guys, it still looks like mischief night in here. You see one roll of toilet paper that made it up there on the light following the segment in the last hour.
I thought he was great. So enough of that demagogue Bill Nye. I'm now with Steve Sadler.
Absolutely, absolutely. Good morning. If you're just waking up, pour a cup of coffee and stay in bed. Don't get dressed. Todd Pyro joining us here, and Rachel having fun. And by the way, this has nothing to do with the news we're going to get to, but how cool are Rachel's
rock.
earrings?
Look at those things.
Listen.
Like Twitter's blowing up on how awesome they are.
Right. Forget collusion and the Russians. People care about the earrings.
The important things that matter.
What's weird is that her husband's going to use them to go fly fishing after we're done here.
Yeah, we shall see. But you do bring up the news, so we must address it. Of course, the big story we've been talking about, two of them actually, the tragic shooting in Parkland, Florida, as well as the indictments. 13 months of President Trump's presidency and 13 Russians being indicted for
three
meddling.
Russian companies as well.
Three Russian companies, a troll farm in St. Petersburg. And certainly we have seen the media, mainstream media, the president being frustrated with the mainstream media. In particular, we want to show you this headline in the New York Times. It reads, Trump's conspicuous silence leaves a struggle against Russia without a leader. Now, of course, we remember in that indictment from Rod Rosenstein, it said that no American knowingly participated in this, and that the results of the allegations in this indictment did not impact the outcome. And President Trump, very frustrated, is tweeting just here in the last hour. Here's what he says. I never said Russia did not meddle in the election. I said it may be Russia or China or another country or group, or it may be a 400-pound genius sitting in bed and playing with his computer. The Russian hoax was that the Trump campaign colluded with Russia. It never.
That's right. He never said that the Russians never tried to get involved in our election. He said, I didn't collude with them. And I can understand why he would be frustrated by, what we're seeing. Because, listen, he has been vindicated. And the media and the Democrats do not want to give him credit for that.
There's a huge difference between the word collude and meddle. And the president pointed that out this morning in that tweet. It is shocking that the mainstream media hasn't figured out this distinction over the last 48 hours.
And the Democrats doubling down on the Russians and their impact on the election, even though we're getting more and more. We'll get to the Facebook VP ad guy who said, listen, it didn't have that much impact. But listen to what Jerry Nadler said on, I believe it was Joy Reid's show. Was it Joy? No, it was All Out with Chris Hayes. It was on with Chris Hayes on MSNBC. Here's what he had to say about it.
This was a very serious attack against the United States by a hostile foreign power, an attack against our election process, our entire governing process. We know that the attack is continuing. The president and the Republicans in the House, for that matter, refuse to do anything about protecting us from an attack. Imagine if FDR had denied that the Japanese attacked us at Pearl Harbor and didn't react. That's the equivalent.
Now, in fairness to Chris Hayes pointed out to the congressman, hey, more than 2,000 Americans died. But here's the thing.
And he's a progressive poster boy, Chris Hayes. And even he was like, really? Pearl Harbor?
But let this not be lost. Jerry Nadler isn't just a congressman from New York. He is the ranking Democrat on the Judiciary Committee in the House, one of many, of three actually, on the Capitol Hill that's investigating the entire Russian meddling thing. Now this indictment pointing out that there was no collusion, that his administration, and no American for that matter, participated knowingly in this. And yet he's not only acknowledging the facts laid out in the 13 indictments, but he's playing partisan politics, going to an outrageous comparison of hyperbole.
He's signaling, listen, if you elect a Democrat majority House, I'm going to initiate impeachment hearings on this president. That's what I think he's doing right there.
Let's look at the language that he used. Imagine if FDR had denied that the Japanese attacked us at Pearl Harbor. First of all, the Pearl Harbor reference is insulting to all the brave men and women who died during Pearl Harbor. But also, let's take a step back. What did we just say 3 minutes ago with the president's tweet? I acknowledge the meddling. It's like the mainstream media and the Democrats don't make that connection.
Yeah.
President Trump understands there was meddling, and this guy says the president's not acknowledging it. He is acknowledging it.
We have viewers that are emailing us. Here's an email from Robert saying, the attack on Pearl Harbor was an act of war. So is Nadler going to push for a declaration of war against Russia for its meddling?
And this one from Ron, does he remember the horror of that day? I think not. I do. And trust me, Mr. Nadler, you desecrate the memory of Pearl Harbor by your comparisons.
And this is an email from Joe. Nadler needs to apologize immediately to all U.S. citizens about his horrific analogy. And I agree. It's both offensive to those folks, but it's also wrong.
It's a strategy, right? Yeah. It's a strategy because what it is they see that there's no collusion, that the investigation is not going in the way they wanted, and they have to double down on Russia. By the way, Democrats who, before Hillary lost, never seemed to really care that much about Russia, were diminishing them as a geopolitical enemy of ours.
And the president, also tweeting about the FBI missing serious tips that were missed that could have saved lives. Let me put this tweet up there. Very sad that the FBI missed all of the many signals sent out by the Florida school shooter. This is not acceptable. They are spending too much time trying to prove Russian collusion with the Trump campaign. There is no collusion. Get back to the basics and make us all proud, not necessarily connecting the two events with the indictments and what happened in Florida, but pointing rather in a larger sense to an agency in crisis.
Right. And also channeling where the American people are at. I mean, the American people are looking at these very credible tips that were missed, these signs that were missed by the FBI, a call from somebody who actually knew this young man who said he's obsessed with guns, he's going to shoot up a school, and they didn't pass that along, and we have this situation. And the American people are looking back going, well, what the heck has the FBI been doing? We know that their leadership has been politicized. We know that leadership matters. We've got lead investigators calling their girlfriends about how to, undo the American election in 2016, and you got to go, why aren't they focusing on the very basics? This is what the president's saying. Get back to the basics,
That's
FBI.
A great point on what the American people want. And think about the jobs that the majority of Americans have. They're very, very focused jobs where they go, they do their job as part of a bigger organization on the whole. What do? They stay in their lane as part of a greater whole. The FBI, at least the senior leadership, is not staying in its lane. What we need the FBI to do right now is protect the men and women of the United States. What we need the CIA to do, we need them to protect the men and women of the United States. What we don't need them doing is wasting time going after a president. They can go after Russia. That makes sense because we do see, the president admitted, Russia is meddling. But we don't need them going after the president unnecessarily and potentially, we have to put that caveat, exposing problems in other areas, i.e. Florida.
When you bring up the American people did their job in this case. We had lots of people sending in their tips, taking photos of their, the comment that was left on the vlogger. And those things weren't followed up. And gosh, if you're a parent right now of any, in that town across America, we're frustrated.
It'll be interesting to see if the president's frustration leads to any announcements here in the coming days from the FBI. I had a former FBI agent that I've worked with in years past saying, hey, Griff, you should suggest that the FBI set up a specific unit that only focuses on school shooting threats. They have one for human trafficking and this sort of thing, like create a department. I don't know. Maybe that's a suggestion that we'll see.
But what we need to do as a country, I think, is really look at this holistically. The left goes, it's just about guns. Look, it's about the FBI missing stuff. It's about parenting, as the teacher who sent that Facebook post sent in. And it's also about mental health. And what do we do about that?
That's a good point. All right, more details are developing as the community is heartbroken over the devastating loss of those 17 innocent lives tragically cut short in the school shooting.
New reports now suggesting that warning signs were missed about Nikolas Cruz's troubling past.
Rick Leventhal live for us in Parkland, Florida with the very latest. Rick, good morning.
Good morning, Todd, Rachel, and Griff. The streets have reopened around Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School, but the police are still here, and the school itself remains closed. We're told there will be no classes at least through Wednesday. The goal is to get teachers in here before the end of the week. But, of course, that building where the shooting took place is likely to be torn down and replaced because they don't want students walking the halls or sitting in classrooms where their fellow classmates were shot and killed. And the focus down here now, of course, is on the morning. There are vigils being held day and night here in Parkland to honor the lives lost and demand, in many cases, tighter gun control. The loved ones, of course, are also continuing to bury the victims. 2 funerals were held on Friday. There was another Saturday, and 2 more will be held today, including services for geography teacher Scott Beagle, who instead of running for his life stopped to move kids into a classroom before locking the door, and then he was shot and killed as the gunman walked by. Beagle, one of several being remembered for trying to save lives as scrutiny heats up on agencies that missed or ignored warnings that might have prevented the massacre. The Broward Sheriff's Office was called to the home where Nikolas Cruz was living at least 20 times for disturbances, but he was apparently never arrested. He was expelled from this school and treated for mental illness, but was still able to legally purchase weapons, including that AR-15 that he used to gun down more than 24 teens and adults. Of course, we are hearing that Cruz is willing to plead guilty to the murders in exchange for life in prison, and the state's attorney says it's too soon to take the death penalty off the table as this community continues to grieve for so many young people lost way too soon, guys.
Thank you
for
that.
All right, Rick, thank you. I know you've covered so many of these shootings, as I have occasionally with you, and this one's really hitting that community hard. Thank you. Thank you for that report.
Sure.
Coming up, a campus protest against white nationalists turned into a rally against cops.
Hey, cops! Hey, fascists! Get the off our campus! Hey, cops! Hey, fascists! Get the off our campus!
Unreal. A live report from that college campus ahead.
And we've been telling you about Mueller's indictments of Russian nationals. Does this mean the Clinton campaign can be indicted for that dirty dossier? We'll ask Texas Congressman John Ratcliffe next.
We've been telling you about Mueller's indictments against 13 Russian nationals for meddling in our election. The question now, what does this mean for the Clinton campaign, and can they be charged for their alleged ties to that anti-Trump dossier?
GOP Congressman and former U.S. Attorney John Ratcliffe is a member of the House Judiciary Committee. He joins us now to weigh in. Congressman, good morning. So what say you?
Morning.
Can the Clinton campaign be charged for that dossier?
Well, you know, there's nothing inherently illegal about doing opposition research or even using foreign sources to do that research. I think that if you want to hold the Clinton campaign accountable, the greater abuses relate to how that dossier was used before the FISA court, and the fact that the FISA court was not told who paid for it, and that it was used as a basis to gain a warrant against to spy against a Trump campaign associate.
Congressman, let's go into the indictments themselves, because if you watch the mainstream media over the course of the last 48 hours, you are literally getting the exact opposite of a legal education. What you're learning is absolutely incorrect. It doesn't make any sense, and it is legally, factually inaccurate. What did these indictments show? What did they not show? And is the president completely absolved, mainly absolved? Where does he fall on the scale?
Well, this particular indictment is mostly good news for the president. Remember, the charge to Bob Mueller was to investigate whether or not the Russians interfered with the election and whether or not there were any links to the Trump campaign. The 37-page indictment lays out with some granularity for the first time how the Russians actually did interfere or meddled in the election, but also very clearly in the indictment and in Rod Rosenstein's press conference, they go out in great detail to say that no Americans, including anyone associated with the Trump campaign, was wittingly involved with respect to this particular conspiracy. So it's mostly good news for the president. I do think that the negative here is that Bob Mueller has clearly indicated in the indictment that the investigation will continue. When a prosecutor uses the term that there are others known and unknown to the grand jury that are part of the conspiracy, that's a signal that there are other either superseding indictments to come or additional indictments about additional conspiracies.
Right, but Congressman, as a seasoned U.S. attorney, you understand the ramifications of saying no American knowingly. That is the mens rea. That is the key part of prosecuting somebody. Am I right?
Very clearly. And so, again, I think that this indictment does not deliver what a lot of the critics on the left were hoping for, that somehow Bob Mueller was going to issue an indictment that would lead to the impeachment of Donald Trump. It's clearly not in here, and there's no indication that any American was involved in this larger conspiracy out of the Kremlin or an association, the Internet Research Agency associated with the Kremlin.
Congressman, we're almost out of time. Very quickly, your colleagues in the Senate have referred Christopher Steele for criminal prosecution to the DOJ. Will we see something of that nature from the House?
I don't think you'll see something out of the House. One criminal referral is probably enough. I do think that there are grounds if someone wanted to charge Christopher Steele with, for instance, lying to an FBI agent, that would be pretty a case that could probably be proved pretty easily. So I think that the House will continue our investigations that are ongoing. But again, the problem with Christopher Steele is the same as these indicted Russians. I don't think that the Brits, even though they're our allies, are going to want to extradite to us a former counterintelligence official of theirs.
All right, Congressman Ratcliffe, thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
You bet.
Amazing
Thanks.
insight from a level-headed lawyer who knows what he's talking about. Yeah. All right, a Florida teacher's post about gun violence is going viral after the school shooting. She says parents need to step up when it comes to their kids' behavior. We have an amazing parenting panel here to react next. Don't want to miss that. We're back with your headlines and a Fox News alert. We now know one child is included in the 66 people killed after an Iranian commercial plane crashed into a mountain overnight. Asiman Airlines making the announcement after surveying the crash site. Flight 3704 flying from Tehran to Yasu, where the family members are now gathering, awaiting more information. Bad weather was reported in the area at the time of the crash, and Vice President Pence touting tax reform to the American people in Dallas while slamming Democrats who oppose it.
Nancy Pelosi actually heard about the $1,000 bonuses that millions of Americans were receiving, and she said it's just crumbs. When our kids were little, another $1,000 in the paycheck in December, we had a term for that: Christmas.
Our Ainsley Earhart toured the border, the U.S.-Mexico border, with the Vice President and sat down for an exclusive interview. You can catch all of that on Fox and Friends tomorrow morning. You don't want to miss it. Rachel?
All right. Thank you, Griff. A Facebook post from a teacher of the year at a Florida middle school has gone viral following the tragic shooting at a high school in Parkland. The teacher's message: hey, it's time for parents to step up when it comes to their kids' behavior. Kelly Guthrie Riley writing, quote, until we as a country are willing to get serious and talk about mental health issues, lack of discipline in the home, horrendous lack of parental support when the schools are trying to control horrible behavior at school, violent video games that take away all sensitivity to any compassion for others' lives, we will have a gun problem in school. Parents, it's time to step up. Be the parent that actually gives a crap. Be the annoying mom that pries and knows what your kid's doing. Stop being your mom, your kid's friend. So what do parents think about this? Well, let's ask our panel, Liz Stern. She's the founder of Diva Moms. I need to know more about what Diva Moms are. And Dr. Dominic Sportelli, he's a certified psychiatrist focusing on kids, right? And Jeannie Zaino, a political science professor. Thank you, all of you. I mean, this has been a very difficult week, and people are asking, what do we do about it? Let's talk about mental health issues first with you. You know, why was this child not, Nicholas Cruz, why was he not in a place where he could get the mental health help he needed?
Well, listen, honestly, what we see in this country right now, there's no question about it that there's a mental health crisis, meaning there are minimal child and adolescent psychiatrists and child and adolescent behavioral health care specialists out there. There's this incredible shortage. Unfortunately, he fell through the cracks. When I look at a situation like him, he ticked every red flag down the line to say this kid needs intervention immediately.
Right.
So honestly, from my perspective as a mental health professional, I don't know how he fell through the cracks. There were just too many red flags.
Well, he was an orphan, so, I mean, there's some other issues going on there. But this teacher is talking about, look, there are other problems going on in the school. My parents were public school teachers, and so they said there's a lot of lack of discipline, parents wanting to be their kids' friends.
Yeah, and I think we've all seen that and experienced that. And just to follow up on what Dr. Dominic said, you know, even if you do identify somebody with a mental health challenge, from a public policy perspective, there are very few avenues you have for treatment. Beds are scarce. Cost is enormous. That hasn't been challenged or handled. And to your point about parenting, there's very few resources for parents to learn how to be good parents and what you need to do.
But nobody had resources before, to be fair, Jeannie. I mean, people were just parenting and not trying to be their friends, right? I mean, where did we go wrong on this?
Things have changed.
I think things have changed. Unfortunately, we need, as parents, now to take a step back and really say we need to be the parents and we're the ones in control, meaning that if a kid says stepping all over you and wants to do something, you say no if you feel that way. You know, my mom, it's interesting, she'll always say to me, your generation needs to parent. You know, we were the parents. When we said no, you understood what we were saying. Your generation, you know, she watches and she said, they walk all over you, these kids. And we as parents need to take a step back and we need to be the ones in charge.
Right. I mean, how many times have we heard that these kids had these weapons in their rooms? I mean, since when is your room, your parents don't own your room? I mean, they don't go in. And that teacher brought that up.
No, listen, parenting unequivocally, empirically, the data shows that a parent's parenting style will dictate the development of your child and the personality of your child. We see this. We know this. Authoritative parenting will lend towards a certain type of child's personality.
More rebellious?
Passive parents, right? Exactly. More rebellious, more impulse control, things like that. Parents that are helicopter parents. Nowadays, we have helicopter parents, these micromanaging parents. We call them cruise director parents. They don't allow their kids to experience adversity and understand how to deal with it on their own. If you don't, I say this all the time, and it sounds counterproductive, but if you don't allow your child to fail,
they have to fail.
Allow them to fail. Yes. Allow them to learn positive coping mechanisms to overcome it.
That's the real world.
Let's be honest, though. Parents have a huge role in this, but we as a community, I say this as a political scientist, we have an absolute role as well. You cannot say, especially, you know, things may have been better 20, 30 years ago when we grew up, but the reality now we have to deal with as a community. It does take a community to raise particularly a mentally troubled child.
Absolutely.
And we don't have the resources.
And the culture has changed, and there's a lot of different
factors, as has the technology and the electronics that these kids are subjected to.
We as parents, something that I always come across with moms always asking me about, we need to do more to teach ourselves as parents and our children about social media. What, you know, how long they really can be on, what they should be watching, what they shouldn't be watching, how long they should be playing with these video games. We need to step up.
Well, we hear a lot about snowflakes. I'll tell you, yesterday we had a kid from the shooting, a young junior junior ROTC kid, Colton Hobb, I believe is his name. He led 60 kids into a classroom. He was prepared to attack the guy if he came in the room. So there are parents doing a good job. Maybe we need to bring his parents in, too, to talk about what they did to raise such an amazing kid. There are snowflakes, but there are some good ones out there, too. Thank you guys for joining us. So helpful. And again, we need that insight in such a tragic week. Thank you. All right, still ahead. A campus protest against white nationalists turns into a rally against cops.
Hey cops! Hey fascists! Get the f*** up off our campus! Hey cops! Hey fascists! Get the f*** up off our campus!
Looks like someone dropped the parenting ball on those kids. A live report from that college campus next. Plus, it's race day in Daytona. Rick is gearing up for the Great American Race with Fox Sports' Mike Joy and Jamie Little next.
Hey cops! Hey fascists! Get the f*** up off our campus! Hey cops! Hey fascists! Get the f*** up off our campus!
Hundreds of student protesters turning a white nationalist event into an anti-cop rally at the University of Tennessee.
Matt Finn is there right now explaining how their chants quickly devolved against our nation's heroes. Hey, Matt, good morning.
Good morning. Well, more than 100 student-led protesters protested against Matthew Heimbach of the Traditionalist Workers' Party here on the campus of University of Tennessee yesterday. The name of the demonstration was No Nazis on Rocky Top. No Nazis referring to Matthew Heimbach, and Rocky Top referring to the campus. Black Lives Matter and Antifa were in the mix. Protesters chanted against Matthew Heimbach of the Traditionalist Workers' Party, which is considered a neo-Nazi white supremacy hate group. From the start, protesters also chanted profanities against police, chanting for officers to get off their campus as police were there to monitor the event, which everyone was prepared to potentially turn sour, as we have seen before, but fortunately it did not. Now, Heimbach's talk in session was private and invite only, so we are not allowed inside. It was described as a speech and perhaps some question and answer. The University of Tennessee tells us Heimbach was not welcome from the start, but the school permitted him to speak here on campus yesterday. This morning, the university tells us it has no release or no comment regarding yesterday's anti-fascist, anti-police demonstration here on the campus of University of Tennessee. Back to you guys in New York.
All right, Matt, thank you very much.
Thank you, Finn. Turning now to your headlines. We now know what really happened during the NSA incident last week, sparking gunfire and injuring an officer. A passenger of that SUV telling the AP that he turned the keys over to his 17-year-old friend after feeling drowsy. The teen apparently following a GPS led him to the agency's gate, prompting a massive response, in turn causing him to panic and crash. No charges have been filed. All 3 people in the vehicle have been released. A private school will soon enforce drug testing using students' hair. I've heard about this. According to the Columbus Ledger-Inquirer, drug testing at Georgia's Brookstone School will be voluntary next school year for 8th through 12th graders. The publication saying the program will become mandatory the following years, testing students for 18 different drugs. The school saying in a statement the testing is to help the health and well-being of the students. I like this idea. Drug test their hair, and if they can't, be in sports. Moviegoers get a rather unpleasant surprise when they went to see the new movie Black Panther, but they ended up seeing the new 50 Shades movie instead. Oh! The Pack Theater in Atlanta losing it during 10 minutes of 50 Shades Freed. The correct movie eventually played to everyone's delight. It's not clear how the mistake happened. Black Panther is smashing box office records and expected to eclipse $190 million this weekend.
How bad?
Your headline.
How bad do you feel for the parents in the audience who have to
terrible.
explain a whole new thing to their kids following that movie?
Yes.
Meantime, we're gearing up for the Great American Race today. Our very own Rick Reichmuth live from Daytona International Speedway.
And he's there with Fox NASCAR's pit reporter Jamie Little and race reporter Mike Joy. Good morning, Rick.
Good morning, guys. So we've been standing here for a little bit, and I will tell you, you guys have been doing this for a while. We'll say maybe 40-some years, 15, 20-some years, yes. Something like that. But the enthusiasm you guys have for racing is contagious. 40-some years into this, you still love it as much as you did at the beginning?
Well, it's all pent up. Yes, the most exciting race is the next one, and the most exciting season is the next one. This is the only major sport that starts its season with its biggest, most important event. So there's 3 months of anticipation building up to who will win the Daytona 500.
Now, between the two of you, you sit at the top of this entire course and watch everything. You can see everything. You're down at the race level with all of the drivers. What's the view like from up there?
It's panoramic, and thus you have to concentrate closely on what's going on, maybe as much as a mile away over in turn 2 or turn 3. And unlike other sports, instead of one ball in play, there's 40 of them.
Yeah, and all of those 40 are all just a number that you have to watch that car. That gets a little bit more complicated. Jamie, so you are down on the track and in the pits with everybody. When I watch, you have the best seat in the house. You're also a bit related to Danica Patrick in her last year. Talk a little bit about what that is like for her and for you being so close with her.
Well, we say that racing is a family, and ironically, Danica Patrick and I, through family, we are related. She's kind of like my sister-in-law. So today's a really special day. I know a lot of fans have followed Danica's career from IndyCar and now NASCAR the last 5.5 years. And today she's saying so long to NASCAR. So it is a sad day for us and for the sport, but it's going to be exciting. She's going to go out there and try to win it. This is a great racetrack for her. All of the family is here. So there's a lot of people with eyes on the number 7 today.
Yeah. So there's also new stories coming up. Talk a little bit about what's next in NASCAR.
Gosh, there's so many great stories. As Mike said, this is our Super Bowl. We kick it off with our biggest race, so there's a lot of changes. There's new drivers, new faces. Bubba Wallace is one to watch. He's in the 43. He's driving for Richard Petty, and now he's the full-time driver. It's his first Daytona 500. I can't even imagine what he feels like, but from what we've seen, Mike, I mean, he has a legitimate shot at winning this thing today.
He does. He does. They have a new Chevrolet. There are 3 makes in the race, Chevy, Ford, and Toyota. They all desperately want to win, and they've put millions into getting ready for this day. The Chevy has a brand new body, the Camaro, but the Ford, I think, has a little bit of aerodynamic superiority at NASCAR's 2 fastest tracks, Daytona and Talladega. I'll be a little surprised if one of those fusions doesn't win.
Okay, well, in case we want to know, Bubba Wallace and Richard Petty are both going to be on the show with me here next hour, so you don't want to turn away from Fox. We will be right back. Jamie and Mike, thank you guys very much for being with us here this morning.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys, back to you.
Great stuff. All right, thanks, Rick. My money's on Kyle Busch. We'll see what happens.
All right.
President Trump now thanking Congressman Adam Schiff. This after the top Democrat says the Obama administration shares the blame for Russia's election meddling. Dr. Sebastian Gorka is here to react next.
And, of course, how can we forget when Nancy Pelosi said this about tax cut bonuses?
The bonus that corporate America received versus the crumbs that they are giving to workers, it's so pathetic.
Oh, I bet she wishes she could take that back. Congressman Todd Rokita unveiling a new bill to protect those crumbs.